All right, so my name is James, otherwise known as Juggling, Matt's dad, and we're featuring none other than Matt Walmsley, my
Nice to meet
son.
you.
So glad to have you here, Matt. And I'd like to talk about some things today, and I have some questions for you. So we're just going to go through them and see where it takes us. So what I wanted to ask you just to start out is, how did you begin juggling? We don't have any history of juggling in our family. I juggled with my friends on my neighbor's back porch, and that was about it. Just like everybody, right? I just kind of messed around with it. But how did you get into it the way you are? It's
All
just
right.
impressive to me.
Let's start back when I was 10 years old. You, my dad, were a person who supported me throughout my baseball career. And when I was 10 years old, I tore my rotator cuff, so I hurt a muscle in my shoulder, and I was no longer able to throw a baseball, to hit a tennis ball, to throw a frisbee, do any of the sports that I did for the longest time. And you know how much of an impact that had on my life.
I remember that. That was a tough time. Very tough.
All right, I have a question for you. Are there any memories that really stick out to you that where I was lost not knowing what to do?
Well, I do. I distinctly remember. I mean, you were a great pitcher, right? You would just mow down the batters. You were the closer, and and then one day he just goes out on the mound and he just starts like not he can't even reach the plate, and the coach is super frustrated, and everything just fell apart. And I'm like, what is going on here? And Matt's like, Dad, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, why? He goes, I can't. My arm hurts. And the next thing you know, we found out he had almost like a rotator cuff tear or something that we couldn't solve. He was a young guy, and
Something messed up.
we didn't want to go through surgery, so we decided to back away from baseball and see if we could help him heal on his own. And that's where we were left. And he was aimless. He had nothing to do. Baseball was his focus. So one day I just said, Matt, look, I know you can't throw like this, but can you go like this? And he said, oh yeah, that feels fine. And I said, why don't you just try to juggle? That'll give you something to do. And the next thing you know, along with some other things like bottle flipping and making ping pong ball contraptions, Matt got into juggling.
Well,
Remember
let me
that?
mention something cool. Do you remember Rube Goldberg machines?
Yeah, yeah.
That was something that I was very much interested in. And as I began to learn juggling and do more stuff with juggling, I began to expand my knowledge of Rube Goldberg machines and trick shots. And all this stuff that I did, it turned into what I did with juggling. Like some of my favorite juggling tricks are considered trick shots in my mind.
Right.
I did a trick where I put a ball between my legs, threw a multiplex up in the air, which just means I throw multiple balls at the same time, and went into a crazy pattern that is super difficult. And in my mind, I count that as a trick shot. So going back to my origins of ping pong bounces into beer cups, that all is a part of my journey. And when you mentioned going up to the mound and throwing that pitch that didn't even make it to the catcher's mitt,
Yeah.
that really brings back some memories in my mind. And
Those are tough times, I'm telling you.
it was an ego hit. At the time, I was prideful. As a pitcher, one of the star on the team, I was always the one who finished out the game strong. They called me the Bulldog.
Right.
And my nickname and my name, my representation of myself was being crushed
Right, your whole
day by
identity
day.
was in that, yeah.
My identity. And I think that's a crucial part. When I was going to my new physical therapist, he asked me a very critical question that I can relate to this. He said, what about juggling is so important to you? Why do you juggle? Why do you do this thing every day, no matter how much it hurts your body, no matter how hard it is, how many competitions you do? And what it made me realize is that it's a part of my identity. It's who I am now. It's not just what I do, it's who I am. And if something gets in the way of me doing what I believe is a part of me, that hurts your pride. It hurts your ego. It hurts who you believe yourself to be.
Right.
And especially with the beginning of juggling, I started to form a new identity. I started to escape this baseball mentality and start to build this unstoppable mindset of reforming my identity with something new, something different, which was juggling. And as a 10-year-old, where nobody else in my school knew how to juggle, I was addicted. I replaced my obsession with baseball with my obsession to juggle. Right. And throwing is something that I did a lot. I did a lot of pitching, a lot of throwing to first baseman, or even being the first baseman. I was programmed to catch. I was programmed to throw. and just changing the orientation in which I did that, instead of throwing it overhead or doing anything that hurt my shoulder, I was able to do something that was underhand.
Right.
And at a point in time, when I was finishing up my baseball career, I was beginning to juggle already. I was just learning how to juggle. And thanks to you, juggling ping pong balls one day while I bounced them into a cup, that was the moment that invigorated me. And I remember that so specifically. That day when we were in the playroom of our house and you began to juggle 3 ping pong balls, I was like, what is this? How do you do this? And I thought that was so cool. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, you talked about identity, right? And even though you felt like that was your identity in baseball, and then it kind of started to get into juggling, along with that, I came along and my identity as your father and everything else was embedded in that, and as you got into juggling, my identity started to shift in that direction as well. And, I really didn't go any farther than juggling 3 balls incorrectly from the very beginning, doing a reverse cascade, which is all I knew.
That's really funny because in this mental image I have of you juggling, I was thinking of you doing a cascade, but you were not doing a cascade. You were doing the reverse cascade.
Right, and that felt normal to me. I thought that was, and Matt's like, no, that's really hard. Like, you learned something really hard. But I'm like, well, how do you do it right? Oh, you do it like this. I'm like, I can't do a cascade. How do you do that?
This is neuroplasticity. You learned something that was technically, it was fine, but learning how to juggle, this is much more difficult than throwing on the inside and releasing by your belly button. Right. But since you practice it over and over and over, your brain changed to develop this motor pattern to be easier, which is something that I find really interesting, especially with my juggling nowadays. Trying to find these, I don't know if hacks would be the right term, but finding these possibilities with brain change, with neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Cutting down to the chase, a lot of what I do is research, trying to find out how to learn faster, how to learn more efficiently. Yeah. Because with fatigue constantly building up, I can't go for 4 hours every day. Right now I'm juggling every single day.
Every day, right?
Every day, along with weightlifting. So I'm trying.
And it's heavy training. You're just not going and playing around.
No.
It's serious business, right?
Some days a little less than others, but
yeah. And what's your goal out of all that? Why would you do that? Why are you working so hard?
Something that I realize is the person who does something every day is the person who gets the most neuroplasticity, which in turn tends to mean that you get the furthest in your career. Now, I'm at a constant battle of fatigue, as I mentioned before. And that's why a lot of people don't train every day, because if you train every day, you're never going to be fully recovered. But what I notice is when I'm dancing around that point of overload, that's where I find the most growth. And with the goals that I have in mind right now, where I'm trying to compete in the WJF, the World Juggling Federation competitions, at the young age of 18, I'm going against guys who are 26, 27, 28, and some guys who are
really good,
much older.
Yeah, their skills are really intense.
And they're better than me, by far. But
right.
It's about getting addicted to the process. It's not about getting addicted to the results. You know me with my mindset. It's not always the best for performing or doing shows, because I just go in there and wing it.
Well, I kind of love that about your performances, but it doesn't make me nervous anymore. But boy, did it at the beginning.
Yeah, that's how I roll. But I get addicted to the process, which in a lot of situations, such as training for a big competition, getting addicted to the process rather than to the goal is what matters. When I have a bad day, I'm happy that I went in and did it. I'm not mad at myself because I had a bad session. It's all part of the process.
Right.
What do you think about the process-focused mindset?
Yeah, I think setting a specific goal is unhealthy in a way, because what happens when you achieve it, you don't have anything to do next. Like you've achieved it, where do you go next, right? But if you've got a focus on kind of an introspective focus on improvement, right, all the time, and just a kind of a lifestyle of improvement, right, then if you win that competition, that's not the end, that's just part of it. and the possibilities are infinite. They're not discrete, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
With your background as a Scrum Master and an Agile coach, I learned a lot from the things that you taught the people you work with. And something that is not always realized is that what you do for work, what you do outside of your personal life, has a big impact on the things you tell your kids, on the things that you spread the people or spread to the people around you.
Right.
Like whether you realize it or not. When you were eating dinner with our family, these ideologies from Scrum, these ideologies from Agile began to spring out, and they planted a seed in me as a young kid. When I was still in baseball, it planted a seed in my mind of constantly striving for more than what you think you can achieve. When you know you can achieve something, it's too easy. But when you push those limits of believing you can do something that you in reality might not be able to do, that's where you can unlock your full potential. The mind is your biggest enemy. It's you against you, and that's the thing that I've been trying to focus on.
Yeah. Who are you comparing yourself with? I mean, that the growth mindset. Are you looking at others, or are you looking at yourself? And if you're setting your baseline based on where you are rather than looking where someone else is, right? You know what you need to build upon, and you recognize the things that need to improve rather than looking at something that seems unattainable, right? So it's kind of destructive, I think, to try to be like someone else. Although looking at another person's accomplishments can be inspirational, and you can learn from it. But yeah, I think that's powerful. And yeah, I was thinking a lot about the other people involved as well. And one of the things that I've been thinking about as we've been talking is the community, and how, like your identity is now more in juggling. And I've gotten involved with the juggling community just as a result of being with you. And
It's this channel.
yeah, and the people that you're competing against aren't just distant competitors. They're actually getting alongside you and giving you support, which I'm really impressed about. I love this community. And how many times have people reached out to you and just said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Good job. Keep up the good work. Here, try this, try that." And they give you technical tips. To me, that's just really awesome. There's some really stand-up people here, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure you do too.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to add something to that. I think community is a crucial part to building knowledge in a field, specifically with juggling, where there's so many aspects to it, so many different patterns, so many different styles of juggling. Where you are in the world dictates what type of juggling you'll learn from other people. So when we go to something like IJA or an international convention, you get to see juggling from all sorts of backgrounds. And when I finally realized that sport juggling is what I want to do, I was able to focus all of my attention onto one thing. When you're trying to go for 10 different goals or trying to focus on 10 different things, whether that be inside of the juggling sphere or outside of it, you're not going to achieve one of those really well.
Yeah, and that's an agile concept. Focus and avoiding multitasking is very, very important, right?
You can't multitask.
Right, because context switching is hugely inefficient, right? Because if you're just always going from one thing to another, you're ramping down on one, and then you're ramping back up on the other, and all that time you're spending ramping down and ramping up is time wasted, right? So now you're honed in on the competitive juggling. All of your energy is going to that, and all of your focus is on that. And has it helped you since you've started focusing on that?
Yes, and the motto that I go by is someone who practices one trick 10,000 times will be better than someone who practiced 100 tricks 100 times. That's why when I build routines, I focus on individual tricks rather than doing the entire routine together. And that's something that's the hot take for me. Not many people follow this sort of mindset. And maybe that's because I follow more of a sport juggling regimen, but people who perform on stage a lot, they practice their full routine through 10 times per practice session. Let's say their routine is 5 minutes long and they practice it 10 times, that's almost an hour. And with breaks in between, it's usually a lot more than an hour. But for me, I segment my time into practicing each individual trick. I'm not good at all the in-between stuff. I can't make what I do look fancy. If you watch my routines on YouTube or wherever you watch them, if you see one in person, I'm not very good with the little movements. In my mind, I feel so artistic while I'm doing it, but I look back and it is cringe. It's terrible. I realize how bad it is, and there's some that I haven't published that are just unlisted on my YouTube channel. I went back and watched one from Pocono Fest 2023, I think it was.
The Pocono Fest is significant. I wanted to talk about that too.
Yeah, I watched that one yesterday. I watched the ring routine, and there was one part specifically, and I might release this now that I'm talking about it. I was swapping from one pile of rings to the next pile of rings to the next pile of rings, and each one was a different color. I made this routine the day before.
Yeah,
and
typical style. You know, that's typical Matt.
as I do. And there was one point in the routine where I was flowing through it, doing one trick with each ring, putting it down, walking over to the next one. And what ended up happening is, in my stressed state of mind on stage, looking at thousands or maybe hundreds of people, whatever it was, I decided to break the artistic vibe and try to kick a pile of rings.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And it went so wrong. It like wrapped around my foot. I like kind of tripped
Didn't
a
they
little
roll
bit.
off the stage?
They didn't roll off the stage, but it just looked terrible. And I'm like, I am not artsy at all. Even if I try to be, I just can't be artsy.
Sometimes you are. You don't realize it, but
It's humorous.
But I mean, I think that was what made it artistic. Actually, was your recovery and the way you handle those things on stage. You do have the ability to recover pretty well, and that makes it fun.
If you never make the opportunities to begin with, then you won't have to recover from them.
Well, that's true.
Which is, maybe it's part of my learning, but when I practice my routines, this was the point I was trying to make. If I have pancakes, parallel throws, and a combination of both, if I have those three tricks in a routine, I don't practice 1, 2, 3. Like, I don't go from one trick to the next to the next. I practice pancakes for 30 minutes straight, and then I put down pancakes, don't do it till the next day. Practice parallels for 30 minutes straight, and then I practice the combo trick for 30 minutes straight. I don't do them combined with each other.
The transition between them is the important part.
For stage performance, that's what it is. Transitioning between them, which I don't practice because I think it's not where I'm trying to get to. It doesn't align with the goals I'm going for. So this is all part of our summary of prioritizing your focus.
I get it. Yeah. But for me, even though I get it, I don't want you to stop focusing on performance because I love performance. but you know, that's fine. I'm willing to give that up. You know, and the reason is because I'm behind you, and I want you to succeed in what you want to do. You know.
Well, let's pause on that because there's never going to be a time where I just stop performing because I juggle. That's part of juggling is performing. You perform for the people that support you, which is the juggling community and different colleges. No matter where I go, these people are supporting me. So I will do routines until I can't juggle anymore and stage performances. But maybe this unique way of training and this unique way of performing will have some sort of personal brand around it. So Juggling Matt, or Matt Walmsley, whatever you know me by, is the guy who doesn't prepare for the in-between stuff, but is somehow a little bit artsy.
Right.
So if I have this certain vibe to my routines, people will be expecting it when they watch them. So even though I don't practice the in-between stuff, I'm still going to perform, and that'll give me a unique personal brand to my routines. So there's a bright side.
Let me ask you this. So even though competitive juggling is very rigorous and it's about the technical stuff, the attention to detail, has performing actually helped you in any way to get where you are now? Right?
No.
Okay. That's fair.
And I'll give you a reason. I spend summers on Ocean City Boardwalk, which you're there all the time, but this is for the audience.
Right.
I perform on the Ocean City Boardwalk a lot.
Yeah.
And
outdoors, in the wind, in the weather, right?
So
sun in your eyes, all of it.
And not just difficult, but it's training the motor patterns in my brain that I've
to
trained
be wrong
to catch in certain positions, and it shifts it over. So now I'm unbalanced, and I'm not sure if it's because of that or if it contributes at all. But I believe that training outdoors trains the wrong motor patterns in
Oh
your
yeah,
mind.
no doubt about it. Even with me, as you know, I'm trying to learn more props, right? And when I started rings, I was in the backyard, and then I instantly remembered a video Matt made about juggling in the wind. He's like, juggling in the wind, be like, and he's like moving across the stage, and I'm with the rings, and there they go, blowing away. So yeah, I can appreciate that just from my recent experience.
Yeah, so you know that training outside in harsh conditions isn't good to get better. So I would say that my performing, especially outdoors, has made me worse.
Yeah. Right.
Which that's one of the reasons I try to limit it a little bit, but it's very helpful when it comes to building your personal brand. And sometimes, which many jugglers will understand this, you're broke. You don't make much money from performing. So when you go out, do busking, do stuff outdoors, you might make a little extra money to make it so you can actually train for
Yeah, I mean,
professional
it's definitely
juggling.
enabled you in different ways. It's not necessarily in the skill arena, but I mean, how were you able to buy your equipment?
Or a car.
Right, everything, basically everything that you've used to leverage to get where you are has come from those things that don't necessarily benefit you in a skill way, right?
Especially as a younger kid
Right.
who doesn't make any money. I mean, as a 12-year-old kid, you don't have a job. You're not making a stable income as you would be when you're a little bit older in your teenage years.
Yeah.
But for me, I was able to perform on the boardwalk and many other venues to give myself a little bit of an advantage over other kids my age. And I was listening to a video of myself driving back from the shore yesterday, and I was talking about how I experientially gained knowledge. I didn't just gain money, I didn't just gain friends, I gained experiences. And it made me appreciate some of the things that I had more. Because I took a little break from sport juggling when I was 13 or 14 when COVID happened. And I played Minecraft for 16 hours a day on most days, which is crazy. 16 hours a day. I think I had 9,000 hours on Minecraft in 1 year. And for the last portion of the year, I wasn't even playing anymore,
Right.
which is insane. And I realized a few things. I could have spent those 9,000 hours training juggling.
Yeah.
And I realized I didn't. And I'm like, oh, I ruined some of my progress. And another experiential thing I learned from that is how valuable time is. And going back to the shore video,
Right.
from the shore video, I realized how beneficial it is to network and how beneficial it is to meet people that you're unfamiliar with.
I mean,
and
that's
do
huge.
things.
And there's another thing that came out of that, right? I mean, you made so many connections, you met so many people, you made so many friends, you got so much support. There's just a ton of really good things that came out of being down there.
And I learned about life. Sometimes you get scammed.
Yeah, there's that too.
I fell for a few things down there.
Yeah.
And even in
Yeah.
New York or wherever I'm traveling to,
Right.
I was a gullible kid. And I'm still a pretty gullible kid. But
Yeah, but you learn, right?
you
and,
learn.
and that's
And-
why I just kind of set you free and let you go learn with some guidance along the way, you know.
Yeah. And sometimes the people you meet are actually very beneficial for your walk.
Right.
And the people that you surround yourself with become what you try to mimic. So when I was at the shore, especially then, I wasn't selective with the people that I was surrounding myself with. And a lot of people that are tourists, I became friends with and I started hanging out with. And a lot of those people were really good for me, and I didn't even realize it. Because when I'm at home, I'm able to selectively go to certain events or not go to certain events. But when I'm at the shore, just people are coming up to me, I'm talking, and when I come back the next day, then that's just how it works. I have the same friends every day. I can't really change who I'm meeting, and I think that was very beneficial then.
Yeah. All right, so look, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about something adding on to what we've already discussed about what you built upon, the things that kind of you've gotten from like the family, from us, that you built upon. I want to talk about how that's a two-way street, things that I've gotten from you as well. We don't just pass things down, right? You also pass things up. So I want to get into that next. So we're going to take a break and then come back to that.
See you soon.
Back, and we're talking about how generational wisdom is a two-way street, right?
That's right.
So not only do I pass things to you as a father, but I get a ton back from you, and you may not realize. And I wanted to touch on that. So I'm going to start out with a question, and the question is, what is the biggest thing that you think I've gotten from you in my life? And there may not be one specific thing. There are a million actually, but the number one thing that I would say I got from you.
Self-reflection. I think I've noticed that in a way you see yourself in me because I'm your son, and it makes you realize what in my life did I pass down to him and that he can pass down to his kids, like stuff like that. What did I do that impacted his life, and then what can he do that's going to impact his kid's life? Like guidance. Like you're a guiding parent rather than somebody who tells me what to do. And I think for my personality type, it works really well. Like being
That's
able to
something
guide someone.
that I've really focused on doing with you, and you know it, right? We talk about that, and I never tell you what to do. I ask
Sometimes.
you. Oh,
Most of the
okay,
time.
I'm a dad, so sometimes I do, but I try to back away from that as much as I can, because it's more important to make you think about your choice rather than me telling you what to do. If I tell you what to do and you do it and it doesn't go right, then I own it, right? But if you decide what to do and it doesn't go right, you own it.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
Well, and I think that's what helped me pick what I really wanted to place my focus on. Because even when I was slacking off and playing Minecraft for 16 hours a day, you didn't tell me, stop, you're ruining your life. You let me realize that for myself. And when I realized I just spent 9,000 hours doing something that has little to no benefit to my future life,
Right.
it made me realize how valuable time is.
Right.
And you didn't tell me. You might have guided me to that conclusion. Like if we went out to go to get something from the grocery store, you hinted like, oh, maybe getting out sometimes is good for you. Or these little things, these
How do you feel
hints.
getting away from the computer? Do you feel any different? I would ask you questions rather than just telling you what to do.
And that all brings us back to your agile background. You were guiding me to the solution, so you made me feel like it was my answer. Isn't that pretty cool?
Oh, yeah.
The fact that I
Yeah.
felt like it was my response and my answer to your question
Right.
made me put it
Right.
into practice way easier and way quicker, matter of fact.
Right. And that's a leadership thing. So, like as a father, you're a leader, just like in the corporate world, as a scrum master on a team, leading the team, you're a leader. And a good leader doesn't tell people what to do, it guides them to deciding what to do. So, so that's interesting that you would say self-reflection. I think that might be underlying the thing that I thought was the biggest thing you gave me. But here's the thing that was on my mind.
I'm curious.
Is dealing with people.
Dealing with people.
Yeah,
In what way?
the way you deal with people. You give people, you give everyone a chance. Does that make sense? Like you when you talk to somebody, you just, everybody gets a fair shake with you. No prejudgment, and like you're just so easy for people to work with.
That's something about the juggling community that
Right.
really opened my eyes. Some of the people that might look a little bit scary on the surface are the same people that are super nice and open to having you join their community, their group. And I
I
think
love that. I've gotten so much just from going to these conventions, and these people are just all incredible. I just love being around them. And there's sort of a base level humanity that we all share.
which is interesting
Yeah,
because
you know?
I feel like especially in the juggling community, people come from so many different backgrounds and so many different current styles of life. Like in the juggling community, there's not only competitive jugglers or artistic jugglers, there's flow artists, there's all these different walks
Right.
of life. And I think
Right.
you can learn a little bit from each one of them whilst not going down their path. And I think each one of the portions of the community has something to take away from, and
I
some
think they
have
do
more
the same
truth.
thing in the other direction, like, right? And that's the thing I love about it, because every person I meet is coming to my level, and I'm going to theirs. Like we're meeting at our common ground, and it's just amazing. I find that to be, and that's something that has completely changed me. Like it,
If you think about interacting with
Yeah.
any one human being, when you're able to fully give yourself over to them in that moment, whilst not focusing on your phone or focusing on the distractions of life, giving the person your attention and giving the person your focus in the way that
Right.
you're not wanting to exit the conversation. That feeling and that authenticity, the genuineness of your speech and of your eyes, of your actions, show them that they can be open to you. And when you show that you
Right.
don't want to exit a conversation, people are going to talk more about what do you want to talk about, what
Right.
they want to talk about. And you
Right.
can start to view a conversation as a piece of art,
And
and you're
that's
like
just not a
crafting it.
decision you're making. There's a reason for it. Because what I learned from you is that when you do that, you find out things about them that you never expected to learn.
Yeah, that's true.
you know? So so every single interaction that you have with another person is a chance to discover something that you didn't know was there.
That's the
It-
underlying
you
mechanism.
know what I mean? Right. So and it just opens up a completely different perspective. So,
In a good way.
right. So that's what I was going to say. But I think self-reflection is more significant. And the other thing that you said is that like I can see me in you, and you were talking about it in a positive way. But if there's something negative as well, I see that, and I realize I need to change that about me to then change that about you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, frankly, there aren't too many things that are negative that I find in you, but like when there are, I definitely realize that it's because of what I've passed
And it's
to
a
you,
two-way street. I'm going to
and then
add
I
something
need to
here.
change it,
It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is sometimes I can see things that I don't like about your personality and see that they're in me as well. And then when I begin to change
Right.
them about me, it transforms into
Changes
you.
me.
And let me give one specific example.
Right.
When you were sick, and I realized that health is a big crisis in modern day society, I began to fix my health. I began to work out, ditch the screens all day, eat healthy, and I realized that you did not know anything about eating, how that affected your health.
Right, right.
And when I started to transform my diet, you started to transform your diet.
I did.
When I started to transform my health in form
Right.
of weightlifting, you began to start weightlifting.
Right.
When I began to get more serious about juggling, you started to learn too.
Right.
My actions sometimes dictate what you start doing.
Yeah.
So it's an incentive for me to keep growing and keep
Wow.
striving for more. And that's something I don't say to you too often, but it's something that's always in the back of my mind. And whether that be with somebody else in the family, one of my friends, or you, it's changing my own actions impacts them.
Wow.
Be the friend that you want for yourself.
Right, right. Wow. That's really good. Yeah. Even as a child, I remember, like not child, but when I was a teenager, I remember I became like my friends. I clearly remember that,
Me too. It's natural human instinct.
I remember actually, like, when I was around one friend, I would act like them, and I was around a different friend, I would act like them. No doubt that's just something that we do. and I think that putting yourself around the right people is also significant, right? Because unfortunately there are people that aren't as great to be around as others that aren't as good for you, even though we don't want that to be true. But I don't find that in the juggling community. That's one of the reasons I'm like so praising the juggling community so much, because I tend to want to be around them. The people at these conventions are just wonderful. But if you go out there in the cross section of society and you start hanging around with someone who's maybe, into something that's unhealthy for you, or they've got a bad attitude, they're negative, or they're, many, many different things they could be doing, you need to get away. Sometimes you need to get away.
Fitting in is a lie.
Yeah.
fitting in is a lie, and let me elaborate on that.
Yeah.
When you're trying to be good in someone else's mind, when you're trying to be accepted by other people, that's what more I'm trying to get at. When you're attempting to be accepted by the people around you, you aren't who you want to be. You're not able to express your full potential. And full potential is a concept that I've been debating with myself for a while. Do I want to achieve my full potential?
Right.
In the way that your full potential is, by technical terms, the moment you die. Because your full potential is your last waking moment. You've achieved your full potential because it's every action, every experience you've gone through is your full potential.
I always say if you're not growing, then you're dead.
Exactly. And let me go into this a little bit more because
Right.
it can be a toxic mentality to have. And when you think, I don't know if I want to achieve my full potential just because of the actual definition of all of my experiences, that leads you down this path of never-ending solitude and being content with where you're at. You don't want to be content with where you're at. I'm not content with where I'm at right now. And that's what allows me to keep growing and striving for more because I don't want to achieve that full potential now, but I'm arching towards it. So even though I'm not attempting to reach my full potential right now, aka the moment before death, I'm striving to raise that bar to make my full potential higher. So I'm constantly trying to make my bar of full potential higher.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And that's
It does.
something that's
But I'm it is, that's a good point. And the other side of it is you need to rest in that. Does that make sense? So it's not like you need to stress yourself out trying to get to the next level. You just need to recognize that you're still growing and you can rest in that. So you can, I believe that you can continually grow and also be at complete, total peace and be, be content, right? At the same time, right? It's not like one or the other. It's not like take a vacation from it and then go back to it. It's just life, right? It becomes who you are. And athletes, I think, see this a lot, where, I'm a cyclist. You're out there doing rides all the time. And if you take a week off, for some reason you can't ride, you miss it and you feel it. And actually you feel a lot less content when you're not out there pushing hard and getting better. And so
reaching your full potential by definition means your last waking moment. If you view trying to reach your full potential as that, then you're not going to push yourself every day. So even though by technical definition, that's your full potential, striving to make that bar of full potential higher is what you should do in replacement of that, because then you're going to be pushing every single day to try to get better and better and better.
There's the growth mindset thing that kind of indicates that, you don't necessarily have limits either, Don't limit yourself. Right? Just don't limit yourself.
Well, that takes us really well into the next question.
Right. So, right, and the question is, what do you do when you can't progress, right? Because you're out there, you're working hard every day to level up and get to the point where you can compete on the same level as these Olympic level athletes, right? And if you hit a plateau, right, how does that feel? And what do you do about it at that time? And how do you get over the plateau?
It feels terrible. And there's two ways to deal with it. And there's two ways that you can deal with it, two phases. Phase one is keep doing what you're doing. Just because you've become stagnant doesn't mean what you're doing is wrong. But you have to adjust your plan if you stay stagnant for too long. So step one is keep doing what you're doing consistently. Don't stop the consistency. But the second thing you need to do, phase two, is reevaluate. Go back and look at what you've been doing. What are some areas I can improve? Why have I become stagnant? What is it that made me become stuck? If you have no reasons and you can't find any reason why you've become stuck, then just keep doing what you're doing. But sometimes in that retrospection, you begin to realize that there's areas of your practice, there's areas of your progress that you can be enhancing. For me, it was realizing how to incorporate more aspects of facilitated neuroplasticity in my training. Some of the weird things I do, are after my sessions, I close my eyes for 10 minutes to let my brain process the things I've learned.
Oh yeah.
And another thing I do is, this is one that I'm beginning to do starting upcoming weeks, is playing a sound during my practice session, whether that be a dinging of a bell or a ringing of a cell phone alarm, whatever it is.
Right. Just to work another part of your brain.
Just wait. What I do
Right.
is, after playing that during my session, when I go to bed that night, during my sleep, I'm going to have that same metronome, same beat, same dinging of the bell play. And some new studies have shown that when your brain hears that same sound, it links increased neuroplasticity for that thing that was going on during the day. It creates more urgency for your brain to learn that.
Wow.
Which is very interesting, and I haven't tried it yet,
Yeah, that's
but it's
cool.
something that I'm going to be trying more in the near future. So there
Well,
you go.
that's something else that you've passed back to me. Going back to the other topic, is continually learning.
Never
and the joy of learning, right? And listening to podcasts and just trying to pick up new things and see yourself differently and how you can apply it. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, those plateaus, when you hit them, does it help to have other people get involved? Does it help to have others team up with you to try to observe and determine the problem?
Yes, absolutely. And you know that for a fact. Because whenever I get stuck with a trick, whether it be 360s or pancakes, any prop, I say, "Help me, Dad." And you get up from your chair, look at my form, and say, "That's what's going wrong. That's what's going wrong." With my foot placement yesterday, when I was doing 360s,
Yeah.
we realized that I was catching myself when my feet
landing
were
wrong.
uneven. So usually your feet should be side by side. I was initiating the spin, and my one foot was landing directly behind the other one, not next to it. So I was only spinning my foot 90 degrees,
Right.
or 180 degrees, instead of 360 degrees.
Right. And you know what's cool? I'm a lot older than you, and it's harder for someone like me to spin. But it encouraged me to give it a try, right? And remember, I tried, and I actually kind of got to the point where I could spin and land relatively stable. So those kind of things actually benefit me as well.
You need some work.
But yeah, I mean, of course, not just a little. But the other thing is, I hardly know anything. Like, I'm no expert. Like, who am I to coach you, right? Like, the level you're at and the way that where I'm at. But I don't mind trying. And because I'm okay to jump in that pool, you actually get value out of it. And I come up with things that actually work, even though I really don't know anything. I mean, I'm no juggling expert, right? But I'm still able to help you, right? I mean, maybe that's a good lesson for life for others.
Pause. This brings us into imposter syndrome. You feel like you're not worthy enough for the things that you've done.
Oh, that's true.
And this can apply to what you're talking about here. Like when you're saying, "I don't feel worthy enough to coach you," even though you've raised me my entire life.
Right, but look, I'm doing it.
Look, you're doing it. And that also applies
Right.
in my mind. And this is something that I saw in you that I realized I needed to change in myself. Because I saw that certain things in your life, like the family you've built or the job you had, you're like, "Oh, I don't deserve this. I
Yeah.
don't deserve it."
Yeah.
But you do. The actions you've taken got you to the place that you're at right now, which means you do deserve it. There's something that you did that got you to the place you're at.
Or not so much that I deserve it, because, I don't feel like I'm owed anything, but I feel like I'm qualified for it.
That's the way to look at it. It's not that you deserve it, it's
Right.
that you're qualified for having it.
Right,
Because we don't really deserve anything, but we're qualified for having what we have.
And it's not that I deserve things. It's that I'm thankful for the things that I have. But that imposter syndrome thing, like, it's more like, don't feel like you're not qualified. You can be qualified, but you have to learn somehow. How are you going to learn if you don't try?
Exactly.
Right? So as soon as you try, you learn.
I think the key takeaway of this question is that there's two phases to evaluating plateaus. The first one is keep going with what you're doing right now. And the second phase is looking back and reevaluating what you've been doing. Where are the places that I can improve? what are the areas that I'm already doing really well, and then making a new plan. So there's actually a third step. Even though there's 2 phases, part of that second phase is creating a new plan.
Plan, do, check, act. PDCA.
PDCA.
Yeah.
Plan,
So,
do, check, act.
right. And that we don't have to go into that right now. But,
I like that.
But just remember that. And hey, go out and Google that. You'll find it very interesting.
That could be a good topic for next video.
Yeah.
So let us know if you have any topics you want to go over
Yeah.
in the next video.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to wrap it up there.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, well, until next time, thanks for hanging around. I hope you enjoyed it.